Welcome to Talent Buzz, where I talk with SaaS companies on how they are doing their talent acquisition. In today's episode, I'm talking with Samir, co-founder and CEO of GetAccept, and we are going through their journey from 0 to 200 people. And let's start from the beginning and their founding team. How did they found each other?
Yeah, so the founding team are four of us, which is when we pitched this to investors, everyone said, no, you can't be that many. But one of the reasons that why we were four is like we didn't meet because we were friends. We met because we had different competences. So we were very diversified in our skill set, and that in order to not need to hire people too early. And get the right people in from the beginning to be able to, run a good product, to develop a good product, to have the right ideas, but also then to market it and to sell it. So the whole cycle. So it's four founders, unfortunately, all guys. I can't change that, but that being said, so that was how everything got started. Everyone has a passion for sales, so we have developed a sales tool for AEs to run deals. So we all have passion for sales, but with from different angles. So to say, I myself are a product person. I didn't develop. I was a VP of product at a CRM company and met a lot of sales reps while developing that tool and understanding like, how are they doing sales today? What can improve as things are being digitalized? And this is before COVID. And then we came up with GetAccept as a tool for reps to run a digital sales motion, to be able to still be communicative, engaging, and run the deals in a way where you build a really good buyer experience in B2B sales online.
Exactly. I was actually just talking with one founder, kind of similar situation, 3 co-founders, all men. What he had noticed is actually it's super kind of easy to hire men next as well, because most of their networks are men and all that. Did you notice the same challenge for kind of hiring first people? Was there a lot of men coming in?
Yeah, I think in the early days, you often happen to hire from your network, and in many cases, of course, if you are in a network with a lot of men, then those are the one you meet most likely. So, and that's much because of you want to hire people you have worked with so that you can trust them and you know what they can put forward. Because in the early days when you maybe don't have funding or you don't have that potential of just failing too much, even if I think you should fail, you can't do the rookie mistakes. And that's why maybe that comes out as a result, unfortunately. And in our early days, that was the same.
Yeah. When did you realize that kind of becoming a problem in some way, that you don't have enough diversity on the team, for example? Or did you notice it at some point?
We were, as I said, four founders was all men. Our first group of we always hire in groups. So we hired 3, where two were I think was men and 1 was a woman. And then afterwards that we always try to, when we hire in those groups, have this diversity of different genders, so to say. And I mean, we've always had that as a thought going forward. And now I think we are 35, 40 almost percent who are female in tech companies. I think we are on a pace towards those 50-50, but not still there.
Yeah. But hey, hiring groups, where did that idea came from, and how does that work?
No, but I think overall, since we also got funding quite early, we always have the experience of hiring in hordes. I was about to say like many at once. And the whole reason is like, as you are hiring, you can more or less guarantee if you hire 5, not everyone will be successful. So that is a little bit of a backup so that you can have that room of actually, not proceeding with the ones that maybe aren't a good fit. Because if you only hire 1 and that doesn't work, but you still really want it to work, and then you maybe push it a bit too far, and then you can have the room to actually, quit those things that doesn't work early. And that's actually for the best sake of both, because often you drag it out too long and then things just get complicated. So I think it's a mutual interest in that. And then also, especially if you hire similar roles in the same time, that you have people who, for example, especially in sales, that can compete in a way to understand, okay, that person is doing in that way and actually working better. Maybe I should do the similar, and so on. And that also goes for development. I mean, if you have 4 persons joining at the same time, they will spread their knowledge. Most likely they know different things, and that will move the group quicker forward.
Yeah, yeah. And I think even though how good you are doing your recruitment or how good the process is, you still end up hiring people you shouldn't, and that's just a kind of fact that is happening. Have you collected some kind of data on that one, like in average from the hires you are making? Like how many are kind of successful in your scale?
No, but we from early days we put in a lot of time in the process, and we implemented quite early a combination of your gut feeling, references, and the data part where we do tests. And then also cases where you actually are doing some kind of solution, dependent then if it's dev to sales, that you are presenting, both for you to understand, do I want to work with this tech? Do I want to work with these challenges or this sales model when it comes to this product? So we have had very few where we have had an hire and fire mentality, so to say. I would say it's far less than 10%. I don't have the number on top of my head, but much because we spent a lot of time in the hiring process. And then also that we don't have that mentality. We really want it to work. So we spend a lot of time on the onboarding, for example. It's 2 full weeks where you learn about the culture, where you learn about our core values. And then on top of that, you then, of course, you're learning your role. And then we repeat that in the first coming half year, so to say.
Yeah, exactly. And as a SaaS company, your market is the kind of global market. You've been growing super fast. As a company, you are from Sweden, but already in the beginning, you went to the, for example, Y Combinator and all that. So when did you started to do kind of hiring outside of Sweden, and did you feel like there was something different when going global?
Yeah, no, but our first hire was in US. As we were moving there, I moved there in 2016, lived there for 3 years, and the whole founding team went there. Though actually the first hire was in Sweden to take over a little bit and have control here while we moved over. But the second hire then was in US, and so we started our hiring there like 3 months in of the company's life, so to say. I think it's quite similar when it comes to hiring, but culture are a little bit different. Like there are small things like how do you talk about compensation, for example, when it comes to sales? It's different in US versus in Sweden. How do you talk about the salary, for example? You always talk annual salary in US, while in Sweden you talk monthly. And all those small things can just make it really weird when you have these conversations like, okay, the salary will be $5,000. They go like, oh, 5,000, that isn't even. And then it's like, oh, it's monthly. Oh, okay, we always talk annual, and you learn those small things as you progress. So it's quite fun to do those things in different countries.
Yeah. I was actually just playing paddle here in Las Palmas with a guy from Minnesota, and we were talking about salaries, and then I did the same exact thing. I first started to talk about monthly salaries, and he was like, "What the fuck is going on here?" But
yeah. No, you're on two different parts of the in the room, so to say.
Yeah, exactly. But hey, you've been funded basically from the beginning, and 2019 you raised the A round of 7 million, and then 2020 the B round of 20 million. How's the kind of hiring in those moments like? Because typically getting a lot of money, you need to grow. Investors has huge growth goals for you. So can you share a bit on those moments?
No, but it is crazy. And if we just go back a little bit, like what we did in the early days, I think we were like 7 employees in total, including us founders. We put forward what are our core values. And I said, we will never put our core values on a wall. We need to live the core values and not just write them somewhere. And we did that the early days. And then as we got to 30 something, we revisited those, and we have done it again when we were about 90, I think. And that being said, we put that into the context of the onboarding of the company, how we give kudos in the company. Like, hey, would say, hey, Samir, you get kudos on this core value, team wins due to X, Y, Z. So that being said, having all that structure in place when we started to hire a lot was really helpful. Another thing, we had a tool to ask questions internally every second week. So they get 5 questions and they get the ENPS internally. And that tells us, how is the job situation? Are they stressed? Do they feel that they get the right leadership things, and so on? And all that helped when we start scaling. So if we wouldn't have that, I don't know how we would have made it. But having that, of course, helped a lot. But on the other hand, one thing that we did early days was also we decided to just do all hiring in-house. And everyone that listens now that do hiring, I'm not saying that you can't do it, but we knew that we needed to, the business shift, the need shift so quick in a startup. One day you can go and say, oh no, we will not hire for that role. And then 2 days after, we need 5 of that role. And you need to have a team that can align with that and be quick. So that helped a lot. But it is tricky. We spent a lot of time on onboarding, developed the onboarding program, and got a lot of super good feedback on that. But it is a tricky thing. So if you think that you will be in a position where you do those like 50 to 100 hires in a year, I think you need to think of, okay, what do we need to prepare early days to be able to onboard, understand what they need, understand how they feel as you then progress. Because if you don't, you will just hit everything in the blind going forward.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it was good example regarding kind of giving feedback regarding the values. One thing that I noticed working well is kind of as a leader, for example, when I'm making a decision, I think it's always good to kind of explain why I did that decision, because otherwise people will be thinking on their own. So if you can kind of tie up your decisions for your company values, I think that really helps to understand the values in real life.
Yeah, and it helps others also to understand what does that value actually mean. If you write it on a wall, we would say passionate, and then, oh yeah, but what does that mean? And often you don't talk about that. What is passion? But if you every week more or less hear, hey, I gave kudos to X because he or she did X, Y, Z when he handed over this deal, and that really shows how passionate he was about that being successful. So he got the kudos for passion. Okay, cool. Then I understand what I need to do and what is thought as being passionate about your work or your role or whatever it is, the company or role. So I think it really helps itself to for everyone to develop and understand how you think and what the core values are.
And kind of interesting thing you mentioned there is kind of having the recruitment in-house. Even though I'm a recruitment agency owner, I still think that kind of recruitment is something that companies should own by themselves. It's a core function of the business. You should own it. Like really, I think you can never kind of outsource it completely. But for example, the moment, let's say that you raised the B round and kind of a lot of hiring was happening, did you use any outside help on kind of, because there's typically kind of a peak of things happening really fast and not kind of...
No, but in particular, when you go into new countries, you don't have a brand, then I think it makes a ton of sense to get help because you don't have a brand. Maybe they don't even know what your product is doing. I mean, then you maybe need some help. So that is a situation where we have used recruitment agencies. And the other part is also, of course, when you go a little bit on the management VP C-level side, because that is it is costly, but I think it's worth it to get a little bit of that, outside perspective, and they help a lot on doing the first initial interviews and just understanding, are they the right fit when it comes to the main part of what GetAccept want us to hire for, and have someone who do that sourcing and just feed you with as many candidates as possible so that you then can work efficient. So I think those two situations we have used agencies, and it has worked really well. And one thing I think is also important when you use agencies, don't shop around. When you find someone that you trust, I mean, then they also, just as your own recruitment group inside of the company understands you, they will also start understanding you. So the second role and third role and the fifth role, it just of course gets better. So yeah, avoid shopping around because it's $100, $200, or 5% cheaper somewhere else. I think it's all about that relationship and them actually understanding what you need and how the company is developing. And I also think one last part is also keep a relationship in between the hiring, so to say, times. So just to like, hey, we are now doing this. This is how we are developing. We don't need anything right now, but this is what's going on. We think we'll raise in next year, winter. I don't know. We are focusing a lot on product now. We need to get to this stage when it comes to X, Y, Z, just to get that understanding for where the company is moving.
Yeah, exactly. And I think kind of what is really hard, for example, we've been now talking about kind of values culture. And I think that's kind of super important hiring criteria to find those culture fit people. So let's say if as an agency, we would come in and work with you like one-off project, like there's no way that we would understand your culture within like, hey, let's have a 30-minute chat and we understand that one. It really needs to be a kind of long relationship in order to get over there. Yeah. Hey, leadership recruitment. I think that's typically at least somewhat a kind of moving point in a company's way when you bring outside leaders for companies. Typically, the first ones might be that you are kind of getting someone from inside of company to a certain role, but at some point in the growth, you most likely want to bring in more kind of experienced professionals. Can you share a bit more on those? For example, you brought in Frida for CMO a few years back. So how is kind of leadership recruitment in your end, and what is important on those?
Of course, that was actually one of the times when we used our agency when Frida joined, and especially in a part where I don't have as much experience. I'm more on the product, and I love sales on the commercial side, and I like marketing also, but I wouldn't say I'm very well on that part of the business. So, but that being said, that was where we took help to really like draft what is it that we really need. And since many of you agencies most likely have recruited for others, you can compare and listen into where are you? We have recruited XYZ for 8 other companies. They needed this, and this is how we will phrase it. So they actually helped out building out that. And that was really successful, I think, to get in the right leader. And then for me, it was important to have someone who has seen, and we often say seen the movie before. That doesn't mean that they need to see exactly that specific movie, but at least that they are in front of us when it comes to like what we want to build. So, for example, if we want to go from 1 million of ARR to 10, you cannot maybe have someone who's taken companies from 0 to 2, because that is one kind of journey. And then the second part is, okay, how to get from 2 to 10 then, or 1 to 10. How do you need to build the teams? They need to have all that knowledge. And that being said, not based on that you shouldn't be able to fail, but you shouldn't fail maybe on the most common things, so to say. So I think that was important when hiring for leadership.
Yeah. But how do you balance between then, let's say that kind of as a company, let's say going from 1 million ARR to 10 million, as a company, you would like to have maybe someone who have done that one before. So going from 1 to 10,
yeah.
but most likely, it of course depends on the person. That person actually might want the challenge to go from 10 to 100.
Yeah.
So kind of how do you sell the company when you are kind of trying to bring in people who have kind of done it before? Like for you as a company, what are the best selling points that you have been noticing working?
No, but exactly, I think that is true. And in our case, I think it's much about being passionate about where we want visionary. So it's, of course, you can say, hey, we need to get to 10, and that is what we need to do in the next coming year. But then we're going up, like we're facing, like we're going to be the global leader when it comes to category digital sales room. We need to build that brand. That category doesn't even exist, for example. what if you would be able to build that, for example. And then also in our case, we had good investors with us. So we had DN Capital and Bessemer Venture Partners. And we had, for example, hired or got in Slack CMO, previous CMO, Bill Makaitis, in the board. So that was also one way of saying, and yeah, we will work together with then Bill to be able to get to first 10, but then also take it to the next part. And that will be your sparring partner to develop us and you and yourself in that journey. So I think that's one way of not maybe only selling like, okay, 10 is the roof. 10 is just the first milestone. You will help us there and you need to get there. But then the next part is where you will actually get really challenged. And then of course, depending on what they've done before, you can always find different things that are new for them. If someone has worked B2C before and now comes to B2B, that can be something that you can get someone interested about, for example. So you need to find your things that makes you unique, of course.
Exactly. But I think kind of the recruitment of board people or advisors is also kind of interesting. You mentioned Bill Makaitis over there. I actually interviewed Bill to my podcast like maybe 2 years ago. And at that time, he was already on your board. I remember him mentioning that one. But for example, did he came through the investors, or did you actively kind of looked and kind of recruited a board member?
Yeah. No, but we said we wanted to move towards becoming more product centric and move a little bit towards the PLG motion. So me together with one of the board members put together a list. These are companies that have done that journey before. Of course, Slack was one of them. And then we just said who on these companies are interesting, and Bill was one of them. We also looked at Intercom, and then to be honest, we reached out together and we used our own platform to reach out with this digital sales room experience where I shared, hey, this is what we are doing now. You're actually in our platform, and I had a video there where I recorded our vision and where we wanted to move, and that helped us to get the interest, because I think many of these, they get so many requests, so you need to stand out as you asked for introductions and their air time, so to say.
Yeah, exactly. What's currently kind of your role on your recruitments? Of course, I can imagine if you are, for example, recruiting for leadership roles, most likely you are meeting with those people. But let's say that you recruit an account executive. Will you meet that person during the recruitment or not?
It's not that many anymore. I think when we got up to 100-ish employees, I started to hand that over a little bit more and more. But that being said, we are 4 founders, so someone of us meets more or less every single one in some part of the journey. Mm-hmm. It can also be like just the last call, like when everyone has decided. It's not. I should never be the one saying yes or no. I don't think that, at least. But I can give my thoughts and give my experience on that specific role and that specific person. But often then in the last call, maybe I'm just the one saying, hey, I just wanted to talk to you and welcome you. You got through this really rigid process. Congrats. I look forward to meet you, just to get that, hey, we're all on the same team. So that happens every now and then, still in like maybe hires where I'm not that active during the recruitment and choosing process, let's say.
Yeah, exactly. And I think kind of a lot of founders I've been talking with are kind of sharing the same story, that kind of their teams are making the hiring decisions when the companies are big enough, and then typically maybe the founder's job is actually not around kind of validation of the candidate, but really kind of actually selling the company. Because typically, if we look at the data and research, for example, in SaaS industries, there's I think OpenView did a kind of research on that one. Then in average, when a person is looking for a new challenge in a SaaS company, they talk with eight different companies. And typically they have few offers on the table as well. So really kind of selling the company is super important part as well.
Yeah, but I think, and to be honest, like, I think I often say like, hey, this is a flat organization. Treat me as everyone else. Open door policy. Like if I say something, that's not what we need to decide for. And I always thought like, if I'm saying that is what they are doing then. Like that is how they're treating me. But I've understood now in the last year that that isn't the case, especially as you grow. Like if I would come in and say, oh, I don't think XYZ is good, that is more or less a decision in many cases. I think I, as a founder and CEO, have learned to maybe express it in a different way. And that is also why I also maybe don't include myself earlier in some processes, due to I want them to take that responsibility and that action. And then I can just welcome them. That call is not about deciding. That call is just about saying, hey, I'm also here. Get to know me. Welcome. Let's have a chat when you come in and grab a coffee. But sometimes founders say, oh, I'm not taking the decision, but I joined very early and then I say my things. But then you are more or less taking the decision. So have that in mind if you are a founder or CEO. I've learned it now after 5 years, more or less.
Yeah, that's a good tip. Hey, lastly, I want to ask you regarding kind of fuck ups, like things that haven't went that well during your journey regarding on people and talent acquisition. Like what are your favorite stories from there?
Yeah, I have two quite fun stories. So we can start with one. When we hired a lot for one period, we had something that we called speed dating. We invited more or less 20, 30 persons into our office. And then we had 5 rooms where they solved or had certain questions, and you got 5 minutes in each room. And we had that during evening time, like at 7 or 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock. I don't remember exactly. And the fun thing was, we of course invited them. We had a little bit of pizza, a couple of beers, like to get that little bit like loose and nice setup. But I was sitting in US when they did one of these in Sweden, and one of the room was that they should enter. There was a computer, there was instructions on how to connect with me to then interview me. So that was one of the rooms. And some didn't manage to get that connection going and so on. But one did, or many did, but one in particular came in and he was like so on fire. Like he was really good. And I was like, oh, this is like a perfect salesperson. He did such a good pitch and he interviewed me in such a good way, like asked those questions that you want sales to ask, like perfect. Then we regrouped in the end of the session. And I was like, okay, but that person named X, I don't know. Maybe we don't need even to discuss that. It's a 10 out of 10 for me. And they were like, no, it's a 1. I was like, what? How can we be so different? The thing was, he apparently got drunk, and I most likely had him in the early part of the process, while others had him in the later part, and he didn't perform that well. So I think one learning from that, like, when you're doing those kind of things, maybe alcohol isn't a good thing to get in, because I think you should respect people, and that if you come into those kind of situations, not to blame that person, but actually you get stressed and you maybe take an extra beer, and who knows, maybe you have a problem with alcohol overall, and then you get forced to maybe, have that beer. So after that setup, we've always had non-alcoholic when we've done those kind of things. So that is one of the fuck ups from our side that in the end then resulted us in changing how we did those things.
Yeah. I was actually, when I was listening to the story, I was thinking like, what the ending punchline will be. I was sure that it would have been actually that salesperson was already working at GetAccept, but you didn't recognize that person. So, yeah.
No, he didn't get a job, unfortunately.
Yeah. But hey, then the second story.
Yeah. The second story is actually, when it comes to references, I don't know what's your thought on references overall. Like, how do you recommend to take references? How do you recommend it?
It's a good question. I don't like the current way of doing that one. I think there is a kind of big problem with the fact that if you would ask a reference permit, for example, for me, whether it's on a recruitment process or as a buying service, I would most likely pick those who are super happy ones. But actually, what I've been thinking that we should do on our own website as a kind of case studies is kind of fuck up studies. So kind of interview a customer where we're really fucked up, because that happens for every company. Yeah, that happens for every candidate as well. So talking super openly about those ones. But yeah, I don't like the way references in job search are currently being done. Not really.
Yeah. No, but on that topic, like I'm in the same. Like I would never say, "Hey, customer X, talk to customer Y here." But in a way, if it was a customer that we have turned to be very happy from being like not that happy, that was great. But often you of course like give the best references that will talk good about you. So I don't treat reference as a when we do hirings, it's not like that's the last thing and least impacting. And maybe this isn't the way of doing it, but if I know someone that knows that person and I know it's like they know them well in a way, like they work together or they have some kind of relationship, you never know, like but it shouldn't ask anyone just randomly, or they are something on LinkedIn, just let's ask, like I know that. So I've done that a couple of times, and one time I did it with one who is a business friend, so to say, and I asked about this person, like, oh, but I got really good reference, like it's super good, everything was good, and I was like, okay, but let's go for this. And 2 days after, he hired that person. So I lost the person. It was really good. You can maybe say, oh, why did you do that? But in the end, I think it's also like an open market. If you do that, you should also be open that person then can choose if they maybe get in contact and you end up losing that potential star hire. But that being said, that little bit of a fuck up that I thought about, oh, maybe I shouldn't have taken that reference, and hit me back again. So yeah, those are the two fuck ups that I remember very, very good.
Yeah, and I agree that, for example, I think kind of, for example, SaaS world, it's kind of super small for sure. For example, in the Swedish market, or for example, if I think about Finnish market and the recruitment agencies, I know most of the kind of founders, for example, from our competitors. And I'm like already scared of that day when someone applies a job for Talent B, and then we end up hiring someone. And because I cannot say to candidate, hey, I can't hire you because I know your founder. But what I can do is, for example, and what we are not doing is like, for example, doing outreach to those people in kind of other person's company we know. But for sure, someday someone will apply, and then.
But on the other hand, I think like you need to have an open mind about that. I think it's bad also as a CEO, founder, or group leader to say, hey, I get mad at you because you jumped the ship, or I get mad at you. Of course, if you're very good friends, maybe you shouldn't go and pick and pull people out. But if people are looking for a job somewhere else, most likely they want to move. Like you don't owe people, you loan people, and you need to then make the best opportunity for them and help them develop. And if you can't, they will leave. So it's not anyone else's fault, it's your fault. Or maybe that's just how it is, like the person wants to move forward, it's no one's fault. But don't blame either the one hiring that person or the person itself. I think that's super important, because who knows, maybe that person will come back when you are in another stage and need that competence that person has developed. That has actually happened on our place, that someone joined us early days, we couldn't get them to where they were, they went someone else, got a lot of competence, and came back and helped us to get to the next level with GetAccept. So I think that is super important. Never blame someone jumping the ship or the one hiring that person. Just make sure that you have a connection still, that when you need them back, it's potential that you can get them back.
And that's a wrap for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Hopefully you got a lot of good ideas about SaaS talent acquisition. If you enjoyed the episode, feel free to share it on your social so others can hear it too. And if you have a topic in mind that you would like me to cover in this podcast, share it with me as well. I'm Samuli, CEO and co-founder in Talent B, where we help fast-growing SaaS companies in their talent acquisition. Make sure to follow us, make sure to follow this podcast, and have an awesome week. Bye-bye.